AITA for asking my boss to stop calling me outside work hours? I sent the message and regretted it immediately. It didn't even take 10 seconds for panic to set in. My boss, the woman who has practically ruled my life since I started this job, had read the message, but she didn't reply. And now I'm here, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, heart racing, and full of regret. It all started when I got a message at 10:30 p.m., asking for something that, honestly, wasn't urgent. My boss, Victoria, is 38 and a force of nature. She's one of the youngest partners at the firm, and has a reputation that makes most employees terrified of her. I've literally seen people avoid getting into the same elevator as her, even when there was plenty of space, just to avoid a potentially awkward good morning. The message said, "I need you to review the reports and send me the updates before 8 a.m. This wasn't the first time. Honestly, since I started working for Victoria 6 months ago, my phone has never been quiet. Messages, calls, emails. If I'm awake, it seems like I'm expected to be available. I knew I had to reply, but something inside me just snapped. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the frustration building up. Maybe it was the fact that I'd been working late nights for weeks, canceling plans, and crying in the bathroom more than I care to admit. I couldn't take it anymore. I replied, "Victoria, I really need some time to rest. Could you please avoid calling me outside of work hours?" Short, polite, direct. But as soon as I hit send, I knew I'd messed up. There's no taking that back. Victoria didn't reply, and now I'm stuck in this endless loop of regret, imagining every possible outcome. Will she fire me, ignore me, or worse, make my life at the office even more miserable? Before this job, I was unemployed for over a year. I survived on odd jobs, mowing lawns, walking dogs, painting walls for friends trying to save money. Nothing that actually paid the bills. I scraped by with some freelance work, but it was all so unstable and terrifying. When I finally landed this marketing job, it felt like a miracle. I knew it would be challenging, but I didn't expect it to be so suffocating. Working for Victoria is like being on a roller coaster that never stops. She's brilliant. I'll give her that. She's the kind of person who walks into a room and owns it. Clients practically fall over themselves to work with her, and the company adores her. She was promoted to partner earlier this year, which only seemed to amplify her already intimidating presence. But working under her? It's a whole different story. She has a way of making you feel like you're never doing enough. No matter how hard I try, it's like there's always something more to prove. My inbox is flooded with emails marked urgent that could easily wait until morning. If she calls and I don't pick up immediately, she leaves voicemails like, "I guess you're too busy to answer me right now." And the expectations? Insane. One time, she asked me to prepare a presentation in under an hour because she'd forgotten about a meeting. I skipped lunch, worked like a maniac, and somehow pulled it off. She didn't even say thank you. Instead, she glanced at the slides and said, "This'll do. Next time, make the charts more visually compelling." The worst part is the fear she instills in the office. It's not just me. Everyone's terrified of her. A few weeks ago, I watched a coworker nearly bolt out of the break room when Victoria walked in. Another time, I overheard someone say they'd rather take the stairs than risk sharing an elevator with her. Despite all of this, I stayed quiet. I need this job. After struggling for so long, I couldn't risk rocking the boat. The job market isn't great, and rent is through the roof. Losing this job feels like it would be the end of the world. But over time, the constant pressure has started to get to me. My friends joke that I'm married to my job because I'm always canceling plans last minute. "Sorry, Victoria just called," has become my go-to excuse. They're understanding, but I can tell it's wearing thin, and it's not just my friends. My mental health has taken a hit. I can't sleep. I'm constantly on edge, waiting for my phone to buzz. I've started having this recurring nightmare where I'm in a meeting, and Victoria asks me a question, but I can't answer because I forgot to check her latest email. Last week was my breaking point. Victoria asked me to stay late 3 nights in a row to help her finish a project. She didn't ask anyone else, even though the work wasn't technically my responsibility. I didn't mind at first. I wanted to prove myself. But by the 3rd night, I was running on fumes. When I mentioned that I had plans I'd need to reschedule, she just said, "Well, if this job isn't your priority, maybe you should rethink your goals." I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded and said, "Of course I'll handle it." So when she texted me last night at 10:30 p.m., I hit my limit. I couldn't keep pretending that this was okay. I couldn't keep sacrificing my sanity just to keep her happy. That's when I sent the message. But now, lying here in the dark, I can't stop thinking about what I've done. Victoria hasn't replied, and her silence is deafening. Every scenario is running through my mind. What if she's furious? What if she's planning to call HR in the morning? What if she decides I'm not worth the hassle and fires me on the spot? The thought of losing this job makes me sick to my stomach. I worked so hard to get here, and the idea of going back to freelance work, or worse, unemployment, terrifies me. But at the same time, how much more of this can I take? This morning at work, I felt like I was walking on a tightrope. Victoria didn't say a word about my message. She passed by my desk once, barely acknowledging me with a nod, but I swear her silence felt heavier than words. The office was unusually quiet today, or maybe it just felt that way because I was hyper-aware of every sound. Every phone ring made me jump. Every time someone walked by Victoria's office, I wondered if she was calling them in to discuss my attitude problem. I kept replaying everything in my mind. Should I have worded the message differently? Should I have said nothing at all? But then, as if fate wanted to test me further, my coworker Megan leaned over and whispered, "What's with Victoria today? She seems even more intense than usual." "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Megan glanced around, lowering her voice. She called Jason into her office earlier, and he came out looking like he'd just been chewed out. Then she spent 20 minutes typing furiously at her computer. My stomach dropped. Was she typing an email about me? Was she crafting some formal reprimand to send to HR? Or worse, was she already drafting my termination letter? The rest of the day was a blur. I tried to focus on my tasks, but my mind kept wandering back to Victoria. When I finally got home, I felt drained, physically and emotionally. But as much as I wanted to put it all behind me for the night, I couldn't escape the weight of my decision. I thought about the other moments at work that had pushed me to this point. Like the time Victoria called me at 6:01 a.m. to ask for a file I'd already sent her 3 days earlier. Or the time she made me cancel a doctor's appointment because she needed me to brainstorm ideas for a client pitch that didn't happen until 2 weeks later. Or the time she assigned me to a project with zero notice and then criticized me for not being fully prepared. When I tried to explain that I hadn't had time to review the details, she just said, "Excuses don't get results." I've lost count of how many times I've woken up in the middle of the night, worried I'd missed something important. How many times I've skipped meals because I didn't want to leave my desk and risk being unavailable. How many weekends I've spent staring at my phone, afraid to relax because Victoria might call at any moment. And yet, despite all of this, I still feel like the bad guy. Like I've somehow failed by asking for a basic boundary. It's not like I told her to stop contacting me altogether. I just asked her to respect my personal time. Is that really so unreasonable? But what if she doesn't see it that way? What if to her, this was an act of defiance? Victoria doesn't tolerate weakness. I've seen what happens to people who fall out of her favor. They don't just get reassigned, they disappear. One day they're there, and the next, their desk is empty, their name scrubbed from the email directory. I can't afford to be one of those people. My rent has gone up twice in the last year, and I'm barely scraping by as it is. If I lose this job, I have no safety net. The thought of going back to doing odd jobs, mowing lawns, walking dogs, patching drywall for neighbors, makes me feel sick. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Maybe she'll ignore my message and pretend nothing happened. Or maybe she's waiting for the perfect moment to remind me exactly who's in charge. Either way, I feel like I'm standing at the edge of a cliff, and all I can do is wait to see if she pushes me over. It's almost midnight, and I still can't sleep. Tomorrow feels like a ticking time bomb. I keep checking my phone, half expecting Victoria to reply out of nowhere, even though I know she probably won't. She's the type who likes to keep people guessing. I can't shake this feeling of dread. What if I walk into work tomorrow and there's already someone sitting at my desk? What if she spent the evening plotting the most humiliating way to make an example out of me? Victoria thrives on control, and asking her to back off might have been the ultimate offense. I've seen her do it before. There was this guy, Tim, who worked in the department next to ours. He was smart, efficient, and everyone liked him. But he made the mistake of pushing back on one of Victoria's demands during a meeting. He said something like, "I don't think that's a priority right now." The room went silent. Victoria didn't even flinch. She just smiled, that cold, calculated smile that makes your stomach drop, and said, "Well, maybe you're not the right person to decide what's a priority." Tim was gone 2 weeks later. No one knows exactly what happened, but rumors flew. Some said he quit because he couldn't handle the pressure. Others whispered that Victoria had encouraged him to leave. Either way, it was a clear message. Don't cross Victoria. And now, I've done exactly that. I keep replaying the past few months in my head, wondering where it all went wrong. Was it when I started letting her calls eat into my evenings? When I canceled dinner with my mom because Victoria needed me to proofread something urgent? When I spent an entire Saturday running around the city picking up supplies for a client event that wasn't even part of my job description? I tell myself I'm not weak for letting it happen. I needed this job. I still do. The year I spent freelancing was one of the hardest times of my life. I'd wake up every morning not knowing if I'd make enough money to cover rent. I took every gig I could find, from editing reports to walking dogs to painting fences. Some friends helped out when they could, but it was humiliating. When I finally got this job, I swore I'd do whatever it took to keep it. And for a while, I convinced myself that meant saying yes to everything, no matter how unreasonable. But now, lying here in the dark, I wonder if I've gone too far in the other direction. Did I make the right call by finally standing up for myself? Or have I just made things worse? Victoria still hasn't replied. I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad one. Part of me wants to send another message, apologizing and begging her to forget what I said. But I know that would only make me look weak, and Victoria doesn't respect weakness. So here I am, waiting for tomorrow to come, terrified of what it will bring. Will she ignore my message and act like nothing happened? Will she call me into her office and give me the same cold, calculated smile she gave Tim? Or will I walk in and find out that I'm already out of a job? I don't know. But I do know one thing. I can't keep living like this. So Reddit, AITA for asking my boss to stop calling me outside work hours? Or did I just ruin my career over something I should have kept quiet about? Thank you for watching. Tell us what you would do in this situation.